Hi there, I'm Kate Bowski and welcome to my blog, Educate with Whole Brain. On our last video, we talked about the scoreboard and how to use it to do smiles and frownies and how to use the ping pong variation. And today we're going to talk about the second part of our scoreboard, which will expand it even more to give you more bang for your buck, so to speak. So the first thing I want to talk about is just a reference to the ping pong that we talked about in the last video. And you want to think about using ping pong not just for a certain time period. I've heard of some people saying, well, I might use it for a month. The ping pong is something that you want to bring in as you gauge your kid's reaction. If you start to see that things are starting to wane and they're starting to get a little bit lackadaisical, that's the time to bring that ping pong back in, because what it does is it revs those kids up. It gets their limbic system doing the up and down, controlling the emotions back and forth between the oh yeah and the mighty groans. And so it's a good way to kind of re-energize your class. So that was just a quick note about the ping pong. Let me talk to you about a couple other variations on the scoreboard. The last time I showed you mine, and we have down here the guff counter. And over here we had some words with numbers. So I want to talk about this section first. And this is a variation of the scoreboard called Beat the Clock. And what I do with the kids is after I teach them how to do the three-peat and we talk about how we pass papers and how we get in lines and how we go back to seats really quickly, then we start recording their times on the scoreboard. Kids love competition. So this is a great way to get them doing things quickly, and your transitions between activities you'll find will take less and less time as you go. So what I do is, let's just say our first one is papers. And you'll see down here that I have papers listed as 6. That means that it took my students 6 seconds from the time that I laid the papers on the desk and said papers to the time that every child had a paper in their hand. And the way that I do this is I will say papers, they'll start to pass, and then I'll just start to count. 1, 2, 3, and they'll know that I'm recording. So the kids have a signal that will tell you when they are finished passing their papers and everyone's got a paper in their hand. And that is that they put their hands in the air and they wiggle their fingers and they say, woo! And it's very fun and energetic and they giggle and laugh. So it brings a lot of funtricity to your classroom. And that's your signal to know to stop counting. So let's say that in 6 seconds they passed all of their papers, and that is how we recorded the 6 on the board. Now the next time that we would have to pass papers, I would lay them on the tables or the rows. I would say papers, the kids would start passing after their three-peat, and I would start counting. 1, 2, 3, and let's say this time they got to 5. So then I would change the 6, and I would make a big deal about, yay, you beat your score, you went from a 6 to a 5, that's really great, and we would do a mighty oh yeah on the scoreboard. So this ties Beat the Clock to my scoreboard so that it keeps that limbic system going up and down. Now let's say that they didn't beat their score. Let's say that instead of making it in 6 seconds, they made it in 7 seconds. Then I'd say, oh, we have to do better next time, and then we would put a mighty groan on our scoreboard. So keeping it going like this keeps that energy flowing in your classroom. I use the Beat the Clock for passing papers, for going back to our seats, whether it's from a partner or a small group activity, or if we've just been up and moving around the classroom. I have something on here called pens. We use checking pens to grade our papers, and the kids have to take out their checking pen and hold it in the air and wiggle it at me, and so that we can see the last time it took them 13 seconds to get their checking pens out. I also do supplies in or out, so whether it's cleaning up from an activity or getting things out for the next activity, I also record that, and then we do cleanup. So use Beat the Clock. Think about, though, using variety within this variation. Don't use it every time, because the kids will never know if you're going to count or not. And so what I see sometimes happen is, especially with passing papers, the kids they're clapping and they're telling each other, come on, hurry. And they're passing papers, and then they realize I'm not counting. And they say, oh, and it brings them down a little bit. It brings a calm to the room. Well, the next time I don't want them to just say, oh, well, let's just pass papers and waste time. I want to get that energy back up, so I'll start counting again. And then that revs the kids back up with their motivation. So even within these variations, you want to vary the way that you do it. So sometimes I use Beat the Clock, sometimes I don't, and it keeps the kids kind of on their toes. Now, let's talk about this section called the guff counter. And you'll notice that it's empty. Here's a key. It is always empty except for when I am teaching about what the guff counter actually is. And here's how it works. let's say that you have a child or a group that sighs at when you tell them what you're going to do, or they roll their eyes, or someone shouts out something that might be disrespectful. This is when you want to teach guff. And what you say to them is you say, "Oh, Johnny, you just reminded me of a very important part of the scoreboard that I forgot to teach. Give me a mighty, oh yeah." And the kids are thinking, we just got a smile point because he did something disrespectful, but watch what happens next. You take this guff counter, and let's just say that you had told Johnny or Susie or whoever it is, sit down in your seat, it's time for us to do this activity. And they say, "But I was just whatever." So you count the number of words and you say, "But I was just." So that's 4 words of guff. Now, what you do is you take your guff section of your scoreboard and you put 1, 2, 3, 4 marks for every word of guff. And you explain to the kids, "I'm not really going to give you the frowny points this time because this is what guff is. It ties to your frowny part of your scoreboard. Look what that just did to the ratio of your smiles to your frownies. It threw them totally out of whack." So you're not ever really going to give guff points. You're just showing the kids what would happen if you did. The kids don't know you're never going to give it. You let them think that there's always the possibility if someone is disrespectful that they can earn this many frowny points just because someone gave the teacher guff or backtalk or disrespect. So you say to them, "What's going to happen?" And you have a discussion about how are we ever going to work back from this many frowny points? So they start to see that disrespect is a really awful thing on your scoreboard and they don't want to earn it. So then once you explain to them how the guff counter works, then you would go back and erase it and say, "I'm going to take those points away today because we're still practicing with guff and I have to explain to you what it is and how it works. So we're going to not use those points today. But the next time that somebody gives guff and the points go here, they count as frowny points for the day." Now, there's a way that kids can stop from getting guff points. Here's the neat thing. You're going to unify your class behind your leadership by having the kids, when they hear or see guff, they hold up their hand like a stop sign motion to the offender and they say, "Please stop." And that keeps me from putting guff on the scoreboard. So you just had your class manage that misbehavior for you. Now here's the class's key to saying "please stop," because you don't just want them all the time saying to kids, "Please stop, please stop." So what you do is, you pat your pockets or you look around, you say, "Where's my marker? Because I think I just heard some guff." That's the cue for the rest of the class to say, "Please stop," to the offender. And then they keep from getting the guff points. But your class is managing the behavior for you, and you don't have to worry about throwing your scoreboard all out of whack. So the guff counter is a really neat thing that you will probably only have to introduce once. You will probably only have to reference it a few times afterwards because the kids realize how badly it can affect their score for the day. And so it's a great tool for managing your kids who have that tendency to do disrespectful behaviors or comments. Now, there are some things that are considered guff that you might assign points for. Things like sighing, eye rolling, slamming things on the desk, or tossing things. They're all disrespectful actions. So what I do is I say those are 2 points apiece. So if I see someone huff and puff, or if I see somebody roll their eyes, I say, "Oh, I think that rolling eyes was guff." And I go for my marker and I say, "Where's my marker?" And the kids know that's their cue and they say, "Please stop." And I guarantee you, your class knows exactly who the offenders are, just as you do. So those are some variations on the scoreboard. So as you start to see that your typical smile frowny scoreboard is starting to lose energy, it's becoming a little lackluster with your kids, start to introduce some of these. Don't do these off on day one. Start these a little bit later in the year when you see that you need something new and fresh, because remember, it's a very long year and we need a very big back pocket of teacher tools. So those are just a few variations on the scoreboard, and if you'd like to try out some others, You can check out Coach B's new book. It's called Whole Brain Teaching for Challenging Kids, and it's available on Amazon.com. You can also email me if you have questions about the scoreboard at katebowski@wholebrainteaching.com. And I hope that you find some of these things useful in your classroom this year. Power to the teachers.